Hey everyone, Stacks here, and today we're checking out Power of 10, this new Jonathan Hickman run on the X-Men, and honestly, I wasn't going to pick up House of X. I ended up doing it because the guy at the LCS, he convinced me that it was worth it, and it was. It was really good. It's doing some very, very interesting things with the X-Men. And in all honesty, they're coming off as villains in this so far, at least in the House of X storyline. And the book's done several different things with graphs and charts and different explanations. And this one does the same thing. Power of 10 does the same thing. And I'll tell you what, I'm digging it because it's creating a massive amount of world building into this storyline. And as of right now, Jonathan Hickman in that storyline has me on the hook. So let's get into Powers of 10. And let me say, this is a hard book to review because you understand page 1 a lot better after you've read the whole book, if that makes sense. But I'm going to give it my best shot, so here we go. The book starts with a shot of X-Zero, which is basically the first mutant generation, called the Dream. Basically, Charles Xavier's dream of a perfect mutant homo superior. It then lists X1, which is what we're dealing with now in the House of X. We're still not sure what's going on, but this kind of helps explain a lot of it. From there, X2, which is the X-Men year 100, the war. It's the big war between humans and machines versus mutants. And then you have X3, which is the Ascension. And that is dated year 1000. And after the introduction of basically the timelines as they're going to play out, we jump to X-Men year 1, which is your X to the power of 0. And Charles Xavier is just hanging out at this fair. He's sitting on a bench when a woman approaches him, tells him good afternoon, ends up sitting down beside him, and they're having a conversation. And it's very much just back and forth banter until she finally jumps to the point. And she does that when Charles says that he's sitting there having a wonderful dream about the world and his place in it. She gets a very serious look on her face and says, "Look, Charles, it's not a dream if it's real." Well, Charles is taken back a little bit. He said, "Hey, do we know each other?" She explains, "Yes, we go back quite a ways." "Who are you?" he asks. And she's like, "Why don't you read my mind?" So he does, and his eyes just get big, and he just says, "Ah." And we know from the earlier page that the one making that quote is Moira McTaggart. From there we jump to Mystique and Toad, who are arriving at Krakoa from their mission that they were on earlier with Sabretooth to recover something. We don't know what. And this mission happened in House of X, where Sabretooth actually killed some of the guards, and they were on their way out when the Fantastic Four showed up. And it ended up leading to a big standoff between Cyclops and Reed Richards. Regardless, the mission was a success, even with the capture of Sabretooth, because Mystique and Toad recovered whatever item it is they were sent by Magneto to get. And while Magneto, the perpetual pessimist, has changed somewhat in that he's actually saying that he has hope for the first time in a very long while, Mystique remains ever the opportunist, saying that she has demands in returning this item. And as she makes this known to Magneto, it's Professor X that responds with, "Is helping your fellow mutant not reward enough for Raven Darkholme?" And Mystique's just like, "Nope, no it isn't. I need more." And Professor X just says, "Hey, I see that. That's fair. I suppose that's cool because we're going to demand more as well." And Mystique seems pretty perturbed at first. She responds with, "Really?" And he says, "I'm afraid so." And she asks him straight up, "Is helping your fellow mutant not reward enough for the great Charles Xavier?" And he tells her, "We're building a better mutant world, Mystique, and everyone who would live in it owes something." From there we jump to Generation 2, X2, the X-Men, and this is year 100. Now in this, a human and a machine are standing over a mutant that's dying, and they're using a device to try to recover information from his mind. We also find out that they have another prisoner, and this one is a black brain telepath. And what that means is these individuals, you can't read their mind, you can't pull information from them, and so they end up having to basically torture her. While this is going on, the rest of the team is planting a seed for the teleport to Krakoa so that they can make their escape. Now, this individual isn't who you think it is. None of these heroes are. None of these X-Men are. They're actually second generation X-Men that have been bred and mixed together. And I'll try to explain all that a little bit more later, but back to this rescue. This character goes by the name Rasputin, but I don't think it's magic. Anyway, she busts up in there, cuts the robot down, and you can see where she transforms her skin to metal, similar or the same as Colossus does. She actually makes the comment, "I can do this. I was made to do this," referencing basically that second generation, she was bred to do this. She was bred for combat. And after watching their robot counterpart fall, the humans open fire. They know it's not doing any good, so they call in a tank. And what they actually call in is a sentinel. And despite Rasputin's best efforts, they still end up capturing the one she was trying to save. And with her sister being captured, she's screaming no. She charges forward, slicing everyone down that she can. And her sister is just telling her to leave, please. And ultimately, she's overwhelmed. She does make it back through the portal, but without her sister, who's been captured. From there, we go to the Tower of Nimrod, where our black brain telepath is being brought before Nimrod himself. And from Nimrod, we get the explanation, actually in the form of an apology, as "I'm sorry what we did to you," of how they were bred, how they bred these mutants in a way that they were intended to betray and turn on mutant kind. Well, they have not had that luck with this individual, and because of that, they're going to give her what is called a bath. And what they do when they give somebody a bath is they put them in a tank, and that tank breaks them down into nothing but data. And that's exactly what happens here. They put her in the tank, they close it, and she's killed. She's being processed at this point for information. Elsewhere, Rasputin and Cardinal, the Nightcrawler lookalike, are arriving in Krakoa, and they're immediately asked what happened. And as Rasputin looks forward, it's Wolverine, Magneto, and several others, and they're standing there asking was it worth it, basically. And right after Cardinal tells Wolverine that we have it, he says, "All right, come with me, the old man is waiting." From there we go back to the tank, where the librarian, this character, is having a conversation with Nimrod, telling him that there's too much machinery floating around inside there and not enough soul to save, let alone copy. And Nimrod basically says, "Look, it's not your fault, it's mine. I simply wasn't built to maintain integrity for a millennia." And the librarian comes back and says, "Look, it's nobody's fault. You've done exactly what you were designed to do. You've created a collective consciousness of mutantdom, a living database of Homo superior, in order to provide a tactical advantage in a war." He then says, "Who could have known how pointless and useless that war would be? Who, at the time, could have seen the surprising end of the human-machine mutant war?" And Nimrod replies, "Homo sapiens. So good to be done with all of that. Are we done with them? Can we ever really be done with the past? After all, that's what a legacy is. And it's why we keep dinosaur bones around." And from there, they stand over this, what they call the preserve, and they say it's a reminder to the great sins of the past. And they look down upon it like it's the Garden of Eden or something. So it's really weird, really confusing. But it's Jonathan Hickman, so I don't really think we should be surprised. Overall, the storyline's got me hooked. Jonathan Hickman's I wasn't going to pick this up. I ended up picking it up, House of X. I enjoyed it. I'm in for Power of 10. But one thing that is absolutely fascinating to me is basically the white pages. And what the white pages are basically a huge blocks of story building for this arc. One of the first ones that it mentions here is the Sinister line, which is a mutant breeding program, which basically, once the population of mutants got to a crisis point, they established a breeding pit on Mars. And the whole point of this, basically, from their standpoint, was to make soldiers. And basically, this program started with a first generation of Sinister mutants, which were uniformly designed to be divergent copies of a singular DNA source. And so these individuals were bred, trained until they were 16 years old, and then they would travel to Krakoa and defend it until ultimately it fell 30 years later. There was a second generation after that where they had two separate X genes. and that led to basically predictable combined power sets. But then there was a third set which produced mutants with all kinds of different power sets. And the third generation, it seemed, was going to be the turning point in the war. However, the fourth generation, the one that followed the third, mathematically, basically suffered systematic failure. The entire batch was corrupted, and it caused the fall of Mars, the collapse of Krakoa. The Sinister Pits themselves failed. And it's claimed that Mister Sinister was playing a longer game of self-interest that superseded any formal association or alliance. So basically, he turned on everybody. He somehow orchestrated all of this, and then later was publicly executed by the man-machine supremacy after he defected. The other really interesting part is when he talks about the surviving mutants, how there's basically 2 colonies in space within the Shi'ar Empire. The first is at a location called Benevolence, and it's a converted transit station, and basically there's about 8,000 members there. And then the second mutant colony is within the throne world of Chandelier? And less than 2,000 mutants live there. And they actually are warrior stock for the Imperial Guard. And apparently there's also 8 of them hanging out over on Asteroid K, which I'm sure will come into play here shortly. So me breaking this down, I hope this doesn't go too much into Days of Future Past where we have time travel involved and we're going back. It seems at the very beginning with the conversation with Professor X and Moria Taggart, that might be something, that might be where we're heading with this. But I'm really interested to see how this is going to go down, if this is something that they're working to prevent, if this is something, what's the end game here? What's Jonathan Hickman's end state? What is he doing to the Marvel universe and the X-Men universe with all of this? And is this, where are we going with all this? Are we going to get a throwdown between the Fantastic Four and the X-Men? Are these guys coming back through time, another dimension? What is going on? It's just, I'm excited about it. It's an interesting timeline. It's going to get confusing, I'm sure, but it's going to sort itself out as we go through the storyline. And I'm okay with not knowing all the answers at issue 1. The unpredictability of this could be a lot of fun. As long as at the end it makes sense, I'm good with it. So let's go for a ride. I'll be picking up the next issue of House of X. I believe it comes out next week. And guys, I'll probably check it out and review that, so I hope you'll check that out too. Hey, if you haven't yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and I want to hear your comments and your theories down below in the comment section. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at comic_stacks. Thank you to all my subscribers, new and old. Guys, I sincerely appreciate you for taking the time to watch this video. That's all I got. Real Comic Stacks, out.